Okay, yeah, I'm gonna do another quick, just a quick, you know, uh, prep for what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna probably set up some more lighting here in a little bit, but yeah, I kind of wanted to focus on some issues that really seem to be the point that's just seemingly more and more and more and more. I mean, where everything I've been like really looking at and getting into as far as um, practical application involving linguistics and alphanumerics and not necessarily I don't really like suggesting history in the sense of an excuse of what the U.S. dollar might only give the impression of a method of banking, or basically, or what a local level might only mean, um, and what's required of even suggesting what a person is even to bank with to begin with, or if it's just once again ultimately getting to whether or not if the social security is ultimately a method of banking in a way of like what non-negotiable, non-transferable itemization means in residential neighborhoods in a way of homeowners association that way, or that 24 thing, or what promissory notes might even mean in a way of GMAC, General Motors Acceptance Corporation, or the International Electrical Electronic Engineering, the IEEE, and the Big O and the 39 thing. I was just like thinking about the thing about the bird, and mentioning something about when you see the P and it's pronounced, and when you see the P and it's not pronounced. I was looking at that Israeli bird, and it's blue and purple, okay. And I've been seeing that network thing about hey, maybe it means something in another geographical area with different alphanumerics, maybe even a different language, or even a computer language, or whatever. It's the blue and purple thing about it, okay. And the thing about it is that the blue and purple is like a 128, and ultimately, with the star of David being an Israeli flag, Israeli being 73 like Harris, and the Houston, Texas thing, and what the color code means to, biblical reference in a way between the separation between church and state, which in my mind is like a minimum requirement of, the Grover Cleveland 1000, US 1000, and all that thou shalt and the Ten Commandment thing about distinguishing the difference of like, can you really see what it really is, or in a way of color code, and what pagan idolatry might even not even really be represented, other than maybe the naivety of what what one pronoun, okay, and that's really the issue about in my mind about what that is with factors that would even suggest what the color code of the Burning State of Texas statutes annotated, or space exploration and where the black dot on the map, and what that is to like Fox 29 News in Philadelphia, and what that is to Benjamin Franklin and the IAA and the key, and Benjamin Franklin flying that kite, and what that is to Harris. In the way of like the 100 Club, and what that is between the difference between 36 and 64, and all the alphanumerics equating to 181. Houston, Texas Electronic Power We International Selective Service, and the list really goes on, and Attenuation USA, and Alphanumerics USA, and Parallel Texas USA, and all that stuff about the Purple Hearts, and like Holy Miracles, and all that universal stuff about what it is in alphanumerics, or Highway 59, one of the oldest like national landmarks, okay, and what that is to the backside of the U.S. $1 bill based upon computation of like really knowing a little bit about something about some real analytical stuff about it. But anyway, yeah. So I mean, like years and years of process of elimination, And well, anyway, yeah. So there's something else I was wanting to focus on in a way of like Geneva, Switzerland, and what the summit meetings, in my mind, involving like the nano pastel colors, the pastel luminant colors of like pastel green of nanoluminous, and nanoluminous of the pastel red of like night vision, and what that is to the once again the night vision, giving the impression what molecular composition is in that way, to like being in the depths of the ocean, or the atmosphere in a way of like oxygen and air and all that, and all that stuff about what day is, and what solid and gaseous, and all that stuff about molecular composition, just everyday living, what that is, and as far as I'm concerned, is the Israeli bird being that whoopa, how it's pronounced, and it is blue and purple. And I was just thinking about something about the P when you see it, and um and it's pronounced, and when you don't see it, or excuse me, when you see it and it's not pronounced, it's like you know it because you see it, but it's not. It's taught that way, not to pronounce the P, in certain words. And normally a S is normally following. It's not the only thing, but it's normally the S is like following the P chronologically, from reading from left to right. And it's normally the S is like, following it right after when reading from left to right. But anyway, yeah, so there's something about that with um, the blue and purple. It's kind of like the Israeli flag and what it is to the absolute Christianity thing, the 6-point star and the Deep Star 6 in the movie, what that really is to color code night vision and FM 1128. But I was thinking about all that Wyatt Earp stuff and Earp technology, but really the exclusionary rule provision, what it is to the pi r squared of just like knowing that the rule is involving the line with the exclusionary rule provision, or what the endorsement is on the back side and what that is. I mean, can you see it from the front side, or is it just that because it's just taught that way? I mean, if it's the only practical application of principle that way, well then that's what it is. In any case, yeah, so I was thinking about that, about the blue and purple being 128, and ultimately it's getting the Israeli thing about the absolute Christianity, and the Deep Star 6 being like the night vision thing, and it's ultimately getting to the 13 stars above the eagle and what the bird is to the 10 Commandments. So like with Charlton Heston and like Yul Brynner and like Moses and Pharaoh thing about the pagan idolatry and the crow and the black crow, okay, and it's like the night vision of it's like, and I was asking myself, really because of an experience I had in a way of like what a heart God is, or what escrow means to like Robert. It seems to be the thing about an FBI miracle that way, and it hadn't changed really ever since really several days after, like June 14th, 1992. Okay, it's like really hadn't been anything different about anything I've had to say about it, or a Saturday morning, the SAT thing about and I can go on. It's not that I have better things to do than really reflect the way I really think and feel about the thing about the psychic warrior. Okay, and America's Foremost Psychic Spy and the cover up. Yeah, the cover on the book. Yeah. It's like the cover up's like a baptism. I mean, you look at it, it looks like a naval issue, like but really, I mean, the cover up is like an international baptism. Yeah, sure. Anyway, so like great. Okay, so June 14th, 1992. Okay, Saturday morning. Yes, the water's warm. Okay. In any case, yeah. So anyway, yeah. So like I said, okay. Once again, okay. In any case, yeah. So yeah. So something about that in the zip code and all that good stuff about the FBI miracle and hard God and Robert and escrow. I went on with that escrow. It's kind of like through years and years and years of alphanumerics and linguistics, okay, geographics and terminology, in different specialized fields, and just normal reading the dictionary stuff, or what degree level, going to medical, legal, and my direction and interest with electronics and audio production, television, and certain factors, just throughout my life, and just television, the history of the television screen, from like the monochrome, the silver silk screen, and what black and white is, the contrast, and all that stuff about it. Well, anyway, there's something else I was wanting to say about the pastel. Transitioning, and I mean, if it's like a retroactive deal about the transition from analog to digital with the pastel, and what Houston is to Harris, and the 73 thing about the State of the Union, or the Union itself, and what the State of the Union address is ultimately getting to that alphanumerics 192, the State of the Union address, and the home theater thing about the American Amplified Living Bible. I mean, how could it not be at this point? That one word transfiguration, Book of Thessalonians, okay? And the MKZ, I've seen it both on Lincoln and Cadillac, the MKZ and the MKHZ. I mean, if it's really the only issue of amplification, what VSAT means in satellite telecommunications as far as like a signal strength, well, there it is, okay? Yeah, so I mean, if it's ultimately getting to, what home on the range is to, whether or not if the MKZ and the MKAC is going to be a distinguishable difference of normally what is an acronym would only suggest. Normally 3 is normally the standard, yet I mean it's 3 and 4. Okay, normally it is as a normal standard. It's almost like binaries being 0 and 1. I mean but yet there's 4 and used in 4 with only 2 numbers, 0 and 1. Sequencing characterization sets of 4. Okay, so anyway, it's kind of like that principle applied to the 2. Excuse me, in that way. But anyway, yeah. So it's like getting to all that. But I was wanting to say something about Geneva, Switzerland. And something about the summit meetings and what that is to like the Houston, Texas thing, and the impedance and ambience. It seemed to be like the peak and crest of the nano, and it's kind of like I was just like focused on it for my own thing about it. I like really got into it so much. I mean, everything of significance. Like looking at the U.S. $1 and so many things about them, just a symbolic representation, or what a financial instrument is to Sarbanes-Oxley as a financial instrument, or what SOX compliance is. Not limited to color code, or um, really what SOX compliance really even suggests. I mean, if it's ultimately getting to a color code of an ox, or Oxley, or normally ox are normally identified as black. Okay, some labeling issue. And really, I mean, if that's really the only issue of Sarbanes-Oxley, being a color code of what an ox and Lee being 17 and like FBI and all that 17Q stuff in and out of the thing about the Q, and what, why is the 56 is 10 and the paper make pen and 56 is 10 and all that stuff, ultimately getting to what legal tender is in a way of programming codes. Yeah, so I mean, there's like a lot. I mean, it's just a phenomenal amount, a huge amount of information that I just have really been thinking about for quite some time. But I mean, after studying through, I mean, you know, caseload after caseload, like in the United States Supreme Court, I really focused on, for my thing about Southwestern Bell being the Houston area and the Code Blue thing. I mean, it's just like, and really, before I even realized that's really, even just gave me more reason to, look at it that way. It was really specifically because of the, Highway 59 thing. To me, it was just like, I mean, the Southwest thing, really before I was even thinking about, what was like an everyday thing back then that's hard to, be anything other than a memory, other than AT&T taking over Southwestern Bell, yet still, maintains the color of the blue about it, okay? But anyway, yeah, so, that way about it, I mean, Highway 59 just seemed to be like the national Southwest thing, especially in the Houston, Texas area. And even more so, my thought about what we international and electronic power in Houston, Texas is to, the Alphamerics 181, or what that is to Harris, or what 73 is to, many things, and what that is in practical application. And normally, and that word attenuation, I mean, if it's ultimately getting to, the Roosevelt's New Deal Act, it's not limited to the FDIC. There's others, but I mean, there seems to be an issue of like duration and what publications and versions is. So even when like what the law library is at certain times, I mean, because I've seen the Vernon State of Texas statutes annotated with the word volume on it, okay, and I've seen it with not the volume. I mean, that's what I'm talking about right there. And it seems to be like the biggest deal about what the really, I heard it in a movie, several movies about the ERISA statute, okay, or the the acronym ERISA, the early retirement income. I've seen it both ways, with security and supplemental annuity. But I mean, really, it's still an acronym, and obviously, that's a big deal about whether even a degree within description of its own degree and not participating in the circuit is, I mean, to me, ultimately, it ultimately defines the meaning whether at any degree level, whether they are participating in a circuit or not, whether they know or not what the acronym is. And in any case, it's kind of like, it seems to me like what the real separation between church and state really ultimately gets to, between what participating in a circuit is and what is not participating in a circuit, is ultimately what it seems to be, ultimately, not limited to, but that's the way I see it anyway. But yeah. So anyway, like I was thinking about something about that, and I want to get back to the bird, and something about the P. When you see it, it's pronounced, and when you see it, sometimes it's not pronounced. And what it is, that blue and purple, that whoopah bird, the bird, as compared to blue and purple and the black, of in my mind, ultimately getting to the black of the what the way I see it is kind of like the escrow, and what that is to 78 and FBI miracle, and what that is to color code, or the Sarbanes-Oxley in the way of color code, of Oxley being like a deal in my mind of Oracle in the Houston, Texas area. Okay, it seems to, I mean, so simplistically, I mean, color coded. I mean, if you, I mean, I've lived here and looked at so many varied things about, whether it's going to be a database administration, middleware, firmware. And those were the three predominantly that I was looking at, and I've seen different versions of like Oracle on the internet, and Westlaw, as a matter of fact, I was actually getting Westlaw free on my laptop, and it's like such a huge difference getting into like the international levels of like Westlaw as compared to what it's, distinguishable to, whether or not anyone really knows the difference. Even, I'm sure that, even a local area network, a wide area network, and a wild World Wide Web. Um, yeah, okay. So, it seems to be like the biggest difference about, whether or not if there's going to be a known fact of, knowing the difference between international law or, maybe a version of what local area and wide area network and like World Wide Web um, present. And still, international law is not quite like a complex, cross-referencing issue as what it is. I mean, it's not real, confusing. I mean, a lot of it, and the majority of it, I mean, is so straightforward. I mean, it's not because of integration at that point. I mean, it is the point of origin, and it's like the source, okay. And it's not in circuit that way. It's like not complex. It's more like straightforward. But like you get in the law library and you see all that stuff in the law library, so it's almost like reading the King James Version Bible and really any religious thing. It's kind of like the format of like a cross-referencing code. I mean, you got to like analytically do so much and so much case presence is ridiculously. I mean, it's like not fun at all. Okay, but anyway, it's kind of like something when I was like getting into the reading about all that de facto and read so many cases about de facto, it ultimately got that after probably about 15 or 20 cases of anything other than General Motors. I mean, General Motors is like repeatedly the thing about de facto. So I kind of like just kind of quit looking for anything else because anything else that I was looking for really wasn't. I wasn't finding. I really didn't know what I was looking for, but other than the simply strictly based on alphanumerics at the time and just the situation at the time. But anyway, yeah. So kind of focused on that word, and it ultimately got to where General Motors just predominantly just dominated. The United States Supreme Court Southwest Court Reporter. Okay, and it ultimately just led to case after case, and predominantly, and I mean, but anyway, that was one thing that I focused on in that way, and looking for the levels that normally were at different levels, but predominantly, like the General Motors, it seems to be really the issue. Really, what available information is beyond business and corporate law. It's ultimately getting to whether or not if the aggregates is really the issue beyond business and corporate law. And what Social Security is to, in my mind, it seems to be like the big deal, and it's kind of like something I'd seen in reference as far as, a movie. Not the only one, but predominantly it seems to be like one of the bigger things involving a recent statute about early retirement, or what social means to like a non-negotiable, non-transferable itemization in the method of banking, or what that means, after, a check, and the simple difference what a direct deposit is or what an endorsed check or what non-negotiable, non-transferable itemization means in social, ultimately getting to the Social Security Administration, or what that means to having a right to assemble after, a transaction at the bank, and all that. So, I mean, it seemed to be like really whether or not if having a right to assemble is just an issue, whether or not if early retirement seems to be the acronym of ERISA, and what that is to the alphanumerics of what ERIA SA, what is that, 18, 19, 23, 32, 50, it's 52, like, yeah, there it is, yeah, it's kind of like a VPN kind of like thing, huh? The recent statute, okay, it's like the 50, the hard thing, like Pearl Drum, Pearl being 52 and hard, and or that, international stuff about 152 and the telepathic card thing, and it's like, yeah, okay, great. So anyway, yeah, so ultimately it gets to like whether or not if the ERISA statute is really the focus on the heartbeat of America, or what today's Chevrolet is. In my mind, it could only really still, I'll focus on what seems to be a lot about the Port of Houston front page news, and actually made world and national news as well. Not limited to, in a duration of like, consistency that, obviously it seems to be, that's significant now of like Geo Prism and Hyundai Excel. And I've heard like throughout my life, today's Chevrolet and Like a Rock and all that stuff. Like that Bob Seger Like a Rock thing it's ultimately getting to like several locations that was like involving an experience that really, I mean, I'm not going to really get into detail about it other than yeah, it seems to be like something I'm sure that but anyway, yeah. So it gets into the plus thing about it. It's like oh no, that's a huge plus, man. Yeah, so like it's like it's a demanded requirement that is going to be a huge plus, and it really is something I'm not going to forget, right? Or if I'm lucky to remember, right? Yeah. So anyway, in that way, it's kind of like a rock with that Bob Seger thing. It seemed to be like the Bureau of Printing and Engraving, and what that is to Lincoln, the hood ornament, and what that is to a 9-degree right angle 1992 map, showing a bunch of horizontal rectangles in that way. But it seems to be the Bureau of Printing and Engraving of stone in that way of certain buildings that were, it's like the Transco Tower being like the Williams Tower, and several other locations of like huge granite brick being carved and engraved that way, with huge letters engraved in it, right? And it's kind of like the thing about it is like certain places during going through the circuit, it's kind of like some of the buildings that never, I mean, according to what I've known, did not have any like huge granite with like word, or the thing that really I'm kind of like looking about that one specific thing is like a huge identifying the building that was like normally just a building, not necessarily that it was identified in any kind of way, like the Transco turning into the Williams Tower, other places. But that's kind of like something about the Houston area that really I noticed. And there's other places, but it was kind of like certain places and buildings involving the word plaza seem to be like a significant thing. It's just maybe it's just the make believe. Hey, if a person gets an impression of thinking that way, well, anyway, like I noticed something like that. Anyway, so like it was kind of like something about that, and today's Chevrolet, and what it is to the Hyundai Excel, today's Chevrolet. I was reading that book, The Secret Simple How the Federal Reserve Runs the Country, and it seems to be the analytical part about that, identifying, I heard it before about a love triangle, okay, but it was never really in my mind. Um, the humor about a heterosexual, okay, or that threosexual, or it's really, not my thing. But it's like I'm not really like blind or naive about someone else's thought about what humor might be. Not necessarily mine, but I could if I wanted to. But that's not my thing. But the thing is that, ultimately getting to the triangle and the pyramid, or what the triangle is to the delta force, or electronic symbolic schematics and symbolic schematic representation, in electronics that way with and what the delta is, that way, to like even the sigma, alpha delta, I don't know if kappa would really be the word, kappa phi, and if kappa really only sets maybe what a projected estimate is, as a projected estimate, as a fixed, I don't know if I would call it a variable, although yet a projected estimate would be ultimately resulting in that, even if it was a set, fixed, approximation. Not that it was given anything other than tolerance, and the reality of when it actually met the projection of what the value would projected as to be. Okay, well so I was thinking about it like that, and I'm really losing my thought here. I'm gonna have to actually regroup real quick and try and get back on track real quick. But anyway, yeah, so I was thinking about that because I'm going to have to take a break here because I'm like really getting, I'm going to try to get a lot of information out as fast as I can so I can hurry up and do that. So I think I'm going to do that real quick here. I'm going to maybe try and grasp and concentrate and get back on track here. So I think I'll do that right now.